I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I met Steph through really just a friend connection, and you recently arrived in Savannah a few months ago, I believe, right?
Yeah, the beginning of January, and I went to your meetup.
Yes, we met at the real estate meetup, and then we had coffee together.
Yep.
And we just hit it right off. We started talking about manifestation, energy, and all the woo-woo stuff, and then we're like, we have to meet again.
Real estate turned into all the good stuff, and then it was like, you're a keeper. I'm going to keep that one.
Exactly. It was mutual.
I love that. I felt it too. I came home and I was like, I made a friend today.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. I remember we texted each other right away. We said, "Oh my God, let's set
do
up
it
another
again."
coffee."
Yeah.
So here we are, and we shared how you had left your job, and we're gonna go into the story as well. I'm like, you have to be on my podcast.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. So excited to be here and share. And if my story can be inspiring to just one other person, then I'm so happy to pay it forward because I'm enjoying my story.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steph. So tell us a little bit about you, where you were before, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm from Connecticut. I am a recovering attorney. I practiced for 10 years and I worked in the probate field. It was a family-owned firm. I was underemployed for pretty much the entire 10 years and found real estate on the side, basically to supplement. Actually, I found real estate because I couldn't afford to rent an apartment. And so instead I bought a duplex, which makes no sense, but the numbers actually worked out much better. So I bought a duplex and started buying more rental properties, found that I really loved real estate in a way that I never felt about the law. I took a position as a commercial real estate agent. And so I was really working kind of 3 part-time jobs at once, the law firm, the real estate properties, and the agent position, and got to the point about 4 years ago that I was able to leave the law firm completely. So I've been either self-employed or I'm 1099 still, but I do very little work as an agent. So self-employed for about 4 years and absolutely loving it. It's given me the freedom to winter here in Savannah, which has been one of my lifelong dreams, and to see it happen has been honestly better than I've ever expected. So that's where I'm really enjoying my story right now.
I didn't realize it was 4 years because I think when did you in 2020? You left in 2020.
Shoot, I think it was 2019 at the end of 2019.
Oh, okay.
75. I don't know. It was about 4 years ago.
Okay, perfect.
I'm actually not sure.
Okay. Because I was just telling, because I'm like, oh, we're about the same time when I left in 2020, and so it's about the same time too. Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look. Yeah. I actually got a bottle of Dom Perignon as a parting gift, and I didn't touch it because I didn't know what I wanted to celebrate. Leaving my job didn't seem like the right celebration. That's a risk. It didn't feel like I had made it. But when we got down here our first week, we actually brought the bottle, chilled it the whole time, refilled it with ice every time we stopped. When we got down here, we opened it and celebrated. This is why we're choosing making the choices that pursue freedom, right? Wow. To be able to have that experience. Right. So yeah, very old bottle, but it was delicious. So.
Oh my goodness. Did you guys finish that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in as a lawyer, were you only working as, you said, lawyer, agent, and then you were starting the real estate at the same time back then?
Yeah. So being a lawyer, so I knew when I was in law school that I really didn't want to be a lawyer. This was something that kind of come up. I thought at the beginning I could see myself in this, like in Miami or Paris, in one of these tier 1 cities where I was just doing the power thing. And as I went through law school, I really love excelling at school, but I do not want to practice law. And I got to the end of my degree and was like, well, now I'm really only qualified to practice law. So I did. I came back to Connecticut for a 1-year stint. That was 15 years ago, just to see what was next, and got into the practice. Really, it was 2009. So terrible time to be looking for a job, and landed in a family-owned firm. So my mom owns the firm. Probate work and elder law is an extremely wholesome, wonderful field. It just wasn't exciting for me. It just doesn't speak to me in a way. And I didn't know what that meant until I found something that did, right? So I would come home and I'd be exhausted. And it wasn't from a hard day's work. It was because I was bored. I was understimulated. I didn't like what I was doing. I liked the results. I was helping people through their journey. They were getting closure. Like that felt really good, right? But it wasn't the way that I wanted to do it. And so when I found real estate and started buying properties and renovating them and renting them out, and I could do so much more work in a day and come home and not be tired, but be just like, oh, that was wild. I can't wait to do it again tomorrow. And I would say my work-life balance, I struggle with it a little bit, but I don't mind it because I love the place that I'm in and the where I'm spending my time. Like it's a hobby for me now at this point. So it's been really fun, but I didn't feel that way about practicing law. But I will say that, thinking about this on the way over, being in that firm gave me, I'd say, like the foundation to move forward, because I wasn't in a place where I could buy the nice house. I bought a duplex, and that taught me about investing, right? So life really happened for me, not to me in that. That was one of the best things that I could have. It was just the best. Let's put it that way. And then the other part is I learned to live fairly modestly and still achieve the things I wanted. I could still live in a really nice place. I just had somebody that lived next door, right? And I remodeled my first house. I bought a condemned property that had no floors, no ceilings. So I was actually able to design and remodel my very first house. Very few people making the money that I was making could do that, right? So I learned to take advantage of the resources around me. And I would say that being resourceful is probably one of my best attributes to this day. What I've come to realize is one of my best attributes. And the other is that I have a really healthy appetite for risk. And all of that came out in that very first year of working and buying the property. And so I started to see where my strengths were, and it wasn't in the practice of law.
So it was really just being able to see that contrast during that time, where
Yeah.
that energizes you and then that really doesn't. That really showed you, hey, let's do more of what energizes you.
Right. And my skill sets are better suited for this space rather than this space. I feel better here. And it took me a while. I mean, from the time that I started buying property, it probably took me 5 years to realize that I was investing and start to do it more often. Then it probably took me another 5 years to get to the point that I said, I'm willing to take the risk on me. So, I mean, it wasn't overnight. It was a slow build, but once the train gets going, there's no turning it off.
Yeah, tell us more about that period where you realized you were not fully fulfilled. Now you see the joyful thing over here. How was that thought process for you to the point where you just, okay, this is no more, this is time?
Yeah, so I always knew that the law wouldn't be fulfilling, and I kind of was trying to figure out what would be, right? So once I found real estate, it was like, it just felt good. I just wanted to do it all the time. I became obsessed, pleasantly obsessed with it. And so that made it really easy for me to want to be spending more and more time. And then my job started to get in the way of what I really wanted to be doing. And then I saw that being in real estate was making me good money, but I needed to learn in a way that they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you real estate. So that's when I joined the commercial real estate firm. And so I was being paid. I mean, it's commission, so you're not getting paid unless you actually are closing deals, but you're going to all the meetings, you're getting the networking, you're speaking the language, and you're just really building your career slowly. And then the commissions start to build up, but I didn't change the way that I lived, right? So I still lived really modestly on that law firm salary, and I took the commissions and I bought another property. And so then things started to kind of snowball when I did that. And I could then raise my lifestyle a little bit, but still be buying property. And pretty much everything that I was doing was like recycling money through various equity recapture strategies in real estate. So building my network there, building my network as an agent. And I just didn't want to build my network as a lawyer. And so it was almost an obvious transition. But I will say that it probably took me 2 to 3 years of knowing I was done with the law firm before I was ready to say, financially, I feel that I can make my bills. I can feel confident that I'm not going to turn back, right? Because once you're out, you can't get put back in the cage. So it took me a really long time, and I still feel I left a little early. I think I've told you that I jumped and I just wasn't really sure how it was going to work out. I had enough where mostly my bills were covered, and then I was just like, I'll just have to keep closing deals as an agent. But I didn't have a pipeline. I didn't really have very much. I was very lucky. I did a lot of work as an agent that first year that supplemented me. And then I bought 6 more units. And that basically put me at the level of, I'm okay now. If I don't do more work as an agent, that's fine. If I don't do another flip, that's fine. I'm okay. And then the market jumped and all of a sudden rents went up. If we were doing turnover, our increase really was, well, now things are kind of fun, right? So it was a slow, gradual, but obvious progression. And I think everybody around me saw it. You know, my mom at the law firm was like, I'm losing you. She's like, do you want to buy the firm? I was like, definitely not. She still asks me, do you want to buy the firm? I'm like, no, I hated being in it then. So no. And then when I finally gave notice to the commercial agency that I was leaving, they're like, we've seen it. You've done great. We'd love to keep you, but we get that that's not the journey you're on. So
right.
yeah.
For you to decide getting into that agent, to be an agent that way, was that part of your plan to start building the income at that point, or was it just for you to learn about real estate?
I think it was both. I definitely think it was to add income, right? And it was like, if I'm going to be doing this, I might as well be also representing others. It expedited my learning curve, and then yeah. So I think it was both. It was recognizing that I needed to learn more. The income certainly wouldn't hurt. And I remember doing some like exploratory interviews of, I'm just trying to get my feet wet. I own multifamily myself. I think I owned the duplex at the time. I was like, I own multifamily myself. And what would you recommend as your next step? They're like, you don't go anywhere else. Like, you stay right here. And that's what I did. I was with them for 6 years. They were fantastic. But I think the other part was I wanted access to the resources, all of the subscriptions and the education and all of that I wanted through the firm, and I was able to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned that you might have felt that you left a little early. Talk us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have enough of a buffer to say my rentals will cover me, right? But I just got to the point that I had been done for so long that it was like, and I was seeing that I was doing enough. I had switched over from being a commercial agent to being a residential agent. And I was seeing that I had enough activity that I was like, I think this will carry me forward for a little bit. I can always do a flip if I want, which ended up not being true because the market turned. It became way harder to do flips. I think I did one after I left. But I've got enough activity in real estate that my rentals will get me through. I had lines of credit if I needed something. I had access to cash. And I don't recommend that that's how people live. I'm not saying that this is the right move. I'm just saying that for me, I needed to free up my headspace, right? I needed to not be going to work for a couple hours every day. I needed to just really be focusing on this and see if I spent all of my time in real estate, what would that get me? And that it got me where I wanted it to go. At least I'm in the journey. I'm on the path to where I want to be.
Yeah. In that journey, was there any doubt that came out? Like, what if it didn't work?
I don't remember. I'm sure I had doubt. And a lot of times I'll make decisions that scare me, right? And you just kind of hunker down and say, like, I know that I can figure it out. And worst case scenario, I could go back to the firm. I would be so humbled and sad to do that, but I knew that I could, or I could go to a different firm, or I had the legal credentials. I just didn't want to, and so it was worth it for me to take that chance. I also had I guess some certainties or lack of burden that I think a lot of people who are trying to make this jump don't have. So I don't support anyone. I don't have children. I don't support my partner. He doesn't support me. We have very independent financials. So really I just needed to make sure that I was okay. And like I told you, I had learned to live very modestly. So I was like, I mean, I can live more modestly if I need to, right? But I had eliminated my housing expenses because I had the apartment next door. I had a bunch of rentals. I just felt like, I don't know how, but through many of these safety nets, I will be okay.
Right.
And I think there were a number of times throughout that first year that I don't know, like I might have to go back. It's not pretty right now. And I think I got more resourceful. And then because I had the headspace, like more projects came up, more contracts came up, the flip came up, right? So like all of these things, that's what I wanted, is to be able to expand in the space that I wanted to be spending my time in. And that happened. But it was not instant. I didn't leave feeling like, oh, this is great. This is great, perfect, and look at all my abundance. I was not feeling that for a while.
Right. How did you get yourself to be so resourceful that way?
I don't know. I think this is just one of my like favorite attributes about myself. And maybe it's that I am really hardworking so that I don't have to work very hard, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll do a ton of research to find the thing that doesn't make me not like repeat it all the time, right? So if I can put something in place or learn a way to like get what I want, but I don't like to pay full price, or if I can find a way, I'll go all in. And I love problem solving, right? So like you show me an obstacle, I will find a solution. You just got to give me some time. So I don't know that it's something that I developed. I think law school probably really helped because you learn how to do your research, what you use for authority. One of the big concepts in law school is issue spotting, right? So you read a fact pattern. This was how we did our final exams. You read a fact pattern and it was all just like hypotheticals of Stephanie does this, Stephanie does this, Stephanie does this. What happened, like what contract problems or what tort problems. And so you just have to be like, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. So I've always been really good at finding problems. And then I think just through the research, maybe, I don't know. But I would say it's definitely been the thing that's helped me the most.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because rather than finding an obstacle and turning around, I find an obstacle and find a way around it. So I've still been able to get what I want, to live the way that I want. So I have very high standards for living, but I couldn't afford my rent. And my rent at the time, I was living in a roommate situation. It was $300 a month. I couldn't afford it. And I was able to buy a duplex where I contributed less than that every month.
Right.
And so that is not an obvious solution, right? That took a lot of work. It took finding the deal, saving for the deal when I couldn't even afford $300 a month, right? I moved home. That logically made a ton of sense. Psychologically, it was terrible, right? Like it was not easy, but I knew that I needed to live in a place that I felt proud of. And I felt safe. And the only way that I could afford, and the only way that I could do that was through this. And okay, so now I have a new goal and I'm going to get that goal, right? So like, yeah, I was thinking today about some of the things that people have said to me that have had the most direct economic benefit to me. And that was the first one I can pick up. My mom mentioned, why don't you buy a duplex? And I was like, that would solve all my problems. Also, like, how the heck am I going to do that? But that would solve all my problems, right? And it did, yeah. And so working, okay, my goal is to get a duplex because, my goal is to live affordably. I can't do that with rent. But apparently it's actually cheaper if somebody else pays your mortgage, right? So like, how do I get to that instead? So I accomplished my goal in a different way and in a way that was so much better for me in the long run.
Oh my God. It sounds like you're really somebody who knows what she wants and in this case, you want to live comfortably,
Mm-hmm.
and then you were very open to opportunities that came your way. Say, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea to get a duplex, and then you just kind of went all in to find a solution for that.
Yeah, and it took me a little while to come to terms with that was the solution. I think my first response to my mom was, "I can't even afford rent, Mom. How am I possibly going to buy a duplex? They're more money than houses." So I wouldn't say that I was totally open to it, but once that, and that's just shame, right? That was shame and me telling her, "You're stupid because I can't do that." But really what that was is I feel really bad about myself. And the fact that you'd present something so out of range for me hurts my feelings, right? So I had to really come to terms with, actually, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And then it was finding somebody that could help me understand, that could represent me, I felt comfortable that I was getting into something that I knew would turn out okay, right? So my agent made a huge impact for me. And I try to share with people all the time, like young people that are like, "Oh, I'm going to buy my first condo." I'm like, "Have you thought about a duplex? Like, please let's just talk about what your options are." So I really do try to pay it forward. But yeah, being in a position to hear and make evaluations about, I've been given lots of terrible advice, right? And I like to think I haven't acted on that. Just choosing the advice that's right for you, but certainly being open of and I told you I'm leading a pod of women, and we're focusing on real estate investing and operations and procedures. And the exercise that we're doing is, who do you want to be? What are the things that you want? And work backwards. And every time you get an obstacle, what are the solutions that are out there and which one makes the most sense for you? Right. So I think that's something that's a learned behavior, but I started learning it at that day.
Interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more? You said it wasn't the obvious solution for you to buy a duplex at the first reaction. How did you become okay with it and accept it in the very end?
Research. So talking to people that had done it, that could explain the numbers. So, and also a comparison. So I could afford to live in a house worth this amount. These are the options for that price point. And I didn't feel safe in them. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel proud, right? So then I heard, yeah, but if you have a duplex, someone else like pays you rent, and that rent counts as your income for qualifying. So you actually qualify for a lot more. And I was like, great, I could get more. Okay. So I think it was through talking to people that gave me new perspectives and could explain why my assumptions of why that wasn't a good idea were wrong. They really opened my eyes to my inaccuracies and the conclusions that I was making, and helped me see a different way of looking at things, which actually is a much better way of looking at things.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And the reason I asked you that, because we always have advice from around us, and how do we recognize the one that we should listen to, right? And I think your recipe for yourself is, okay, you were open to receiving that advice, and then you took on the role of the researching for yourself so you can understand for yourself, and that's kind of been your recipe for success in all these different ventures. My hallucination is that you really took on that role, and so that you can also convince yourself that, okay, this is the right decision for yourself, right?
Yeah, and I think I probably started, if I look back on that, I probably started with the solution is I need to make more money, right? So I can afford my rent. And then, so I'd have to change jobs, and then I'd have to be a lawyer more. And I don't even want to be a lawyer as much as I'm being a lawyer now. So I just, like, every direction I went in that thread was an obstacle, an obstacle, an obstacle. That just doesn't feel good. And it feels more fun to like browse property online. So I think there was a little bit of like, where are the obstacles enjoyable to solve? And then the one, when I thought that this would be a more interesting path, it was, now I need to get some help in understanding it. So, I mean, I really value mentorship, networking. I think by talking to people that are in the space that you're in, even if they're peers. They don't have to be mentors. They can be colleagues. They can be people actually that are not as experienced to you, but might have done something a little bit differently. I think that is where you get the best education, honestly. So I've talked to you about how I really feel the value in like creating the network and being involved in the community of people that are doing what you want to do. And I think that certainly makes scary things less scary. It accelerates your education. And I think all of that, I started with talking to my agent. It's like, yeah, numbers are, you could either pay 100% of your mortgage or not, or somebody else pays a certain percentage. And it's like, why does anyone pay their mortgage if that's an option, you know? Like,
Your wheels start turning.
yeah, exactly. But I didn't think like that until somebody else. And I think also this, I forgot about this. My parents brought me to a Millionaire Mind seminar, and I only went because they promised me we'd stay at a nice hotel and they'd treat me to dinner. So fine, we'll go. That changed my life. I totally forgot about it, but it was all about saving and investing and the difference. I mean, very rich dad, poor dad mentalities, right? You could go into a job and you work that job and you spend that money, and then you work the job and you spend the money, and or you can own a business, or you can invest, and how that financially differs. And at the time, I think I had been around that time making the decision of, do I earn more money to save to pay the rent? And then, well, maybe somebody else pays the rent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then talk us through that, like what that means, the business side or the earning side. How did that open up your eyes to that?
Yeah, I really understood the difference. That showed me the difference, I guess, between trading time for money and being paid to exist, and the services that you provide, which are not necessarily tied to time. And how if you're trading time for money, you are limited by the hourly rate that you earn and the number of hours that you work, which after law school, I just didn't want to work many hours because I was working a ton of hours in law school to succeed, right? And then the option of, well, if you put something in place and that thing generates money for you, whether you continue to do it or not, whether you're working on it or not, whether you're there to tell them to pay rent or not, and then you could buy more and more and more, and it doesn't require more and more of your time, you have no limitations on your income. And that was really special to hear from this. I think I was 25 at the time, and yeah, couldn't afford rent and was just blown away by what I learned and couldn't wait to come back. And then he also told me, or the seminar also shared, like just different ways of savings, right? Having different buckets, and like you spread your money across your buckets, and the more buckets you have, somehow the more money you have. And I did that. I think those are like the only two things I took from that seminar. I actually went back. I brought my boyfriend to the seminar like 10 years later. It's the same seminar, but I took something so much higher. I think he took that first level because he wasn't familiar with the concepts. He took that first level, and actually there's some like really deep stuff here. So I could probably go back to that year after year after year and take the next level of information from it. Yeah. Really fascinating.
Yeah, so that was the catalyst to open up your eyes. Oh, there's another world. Yeah. Were you aware before you heard that you were trading your time for money?
No, definitely not. I mean, my parents had talked a lot about open a business or buy real estate. I mean, my mom owned the law firm, but really she had a job. She was the only lawyer before I came in. My dad was an engineer, so he was trading time for money. So even though they had talked about these concepts, the role models in my life were very much trading time for money. And that was, so I think I had maybe the seed planted very young, but what I thought my life would look like was definitely what my parents' lives looked like, trading time for money.
Right. Yeah. So then from that point, you went to really just start off on this whole research on the real estate journey and to pursue what that could look like for you. Did you know that real estate was going to be it?
Or? No. I mean, really, I was just trying to live cheaply. That is how I fell into real estate. And then it was so fun to do the projects, to manage the construction. And even actually, once I owned the duplex, I still didn't know that I was investing. I just thought I was living cheaply. So I always say I'm an accidental investor. I then bought a single family home. I was going to move into it. And then I did the cash flow analysis. Well, I would make more money. I would cash flow more if I rented the single family that I just bought. So I never moved from my duplex to my single family. And then one month I had a vacancy and I had to pay the whole mortgage myself. And I was like, oh, I get it. So I can always just have somebody pay my mortgage and I can buy more of these. And then, well, now this is really fun. But I think naturally I've always had an affinity to real estate. If I go travel, the first thing I want to do is go drive the neighborhoods. I want to see how people live. I want to see the architecture. I like imagining myself walking through their door, right? What happens in homes? So home, shelter, atmosphere, aesthetic design, like is all it's just a priority for me, but I didn't know that it could also be lucrative. And this would be an industry that I fell into. So this was not intentional, but it was definitely just one of those follow the energy, follow the joy. And I got very lucky to find something that allows me to be full-time in this space, to have the creative freedom, the headspace. And so I found real estate accidentally.
Wow.
Thank God.
Looking back, you said you talked about finding the joy and following the joy. Mm-hmm. How does that feel for you? What does that mean for you, following the joy?
Yeah, it was what projects or areas or what do I do during the day that's the most interesting? And it's not always fun. Real estate, I lost $50,000 on my first flip. Not fun, right? I think I cried. I'm pretty sure I cried. So I don't say joy as in pleasure. I mean interest, excitement, where I just found that my vibration was higher when I was in real estate. There's so much to learn and puzzle pieces. And I just found that when I was in that space and I was calling towns and trying to figure out zoning, or when I was trying to work on construction projects and do design and refinancing and get tenants and provide them with the housing that I'm so proud to deliver, right? All of the needs for me between money, shelter, doing right by my clients, so I would say my tenants, that aesthetic design, all of that was satisfied, and I just enjoyed the hurt of real estate in a way that I didn't enjoy the hurt of being a lawyer. So then it was, I did one, could I do 3? Could I do 1 a year? Could I do 2 a year? Right? Can I buy 6 in 2 months, right? So all of that kind of was just really based on like, this is just fun. And a lot of my friends, so my friends are not, the friends I grew up with are not in this space. I have 2 clear groups of friends, those that I know and love from before real estate and those after real estate. And I'm still friends with both categories, but the ones that are in my previous life think that what I'm doing is scary, is very risky. And, even those that have moved in with their partner have sold their properties rather than keep them. So it's just not a space that they want to be in. The friends that I've reached out to or connected with after have been really on that same journey of self-education. This is fun. This is scary, but that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah. With your old friends, was there any time that you had, what if I went on this new path? What would you think of me?
No, I think I was always really proud of this path. I always idolized flippers and landlords. I always thought they're the ones, like, I don't know why. I just always thought they were doing it, right? And I didn't even realize that there's a stigma against landlords. So now I tell people I'm a landlord, the good kind. Don't worry. I was a lawyer, the good kind. Don't worry, right? So many stigmas. So I don't think I ever really had this like, but maybe I did, because I tell people the good kind, right? I'm in real estate for the right reasons. I'm proud of, I'm proud of the way I treat my tenants. We've found a rent collection platform that allows them to build their credit when they rent from us. We hold holiday raffles, right? Like, it's important to me, even if it's not my friends, but my tenants have a good experience with me. So it's important to me. And then I think that shows. I did have a friend, she's a very good friend of mine. And I remember her saying, this is from the previous life, and she's like, "You're doing so well. You're doing too well."
Wow.
And that was just really telling to me that not everybody is happy for your success, or there's concern that we wouldn't connect anymore. And she, to this day, is still one of my best friends. That didn't happen. But I could tell that but she's not somebody that I talk to about my real estate. I might give her updates on the new construction project. I might give her updates on a renovation. She's got a great eye. I'm like, what color would you choose, right? So I might include her in some of the high level or fun stuff, but the weeds, when I really need to talk things through, she's not somebody that I would go to, because she just doesn't see things the same way. So that's been a balance, but one that I've made up for with the new friends that I've made in this new space. We just have different conversations.
Yeah, right. Looking back, was there any regret of doing the law degree?
I think about this. I get asked this all the time. I think no. I mean, maybe. Let's say yes. I'm going to say yes because the student debt was crazy, right? It's very expensive. But more than that, I mean, I've made that up tenfold. So I'm not so concerned about the student debt, right? I'm happy to pay for great education. I don't know that it needed to be in a formal setting. If I wish I had taken that money and thrown it into learning real estate specifically. So I probably would have better used that tuition, but more importantly, those years. So those were really formative years right after college, when I probably could have better spent my time diving in. But I don't regret it, because I don't know that I would have found real estate otherwise, right? I'm happy to have the path that I am on now. And if changing one thing about my past would have changed the outcome, I don't want to change it, right? So yeah, again, I mean, being underemployed, finding out that I didn't want to be a lawyer, that's what got me into real estate. So that's been such something I was so resentful of for such a long time. And once I realized I'm here because of that pain, it's just allowed me so much more acceptance and grace over those decisions. And like that shame, there's still shame over those years, but now it's balanced with pride of how things are going now.
Right. The reason I asked you that, because oftentimes and I experienced that when I wanted to leave my engineering job, my mom told me, "Say, well, what are you going to do with your degree? You just wasted it. You're going to waste it, right?"
My dad called me a trail of unused degrees. I was like, "You're not wrong, but that hurt."
How do you feel about that?
That hurt, yeah, because I knew that he was disappointed. I don't regret the degrees that I got, but knowing that he looked down on my decisions, and he's no longer with us, but he has told me he is so proud, and the decisions that I made, he recognizes their value now, which I'm really glad we had the opportunity to have that conversation. Right. But yeah, that was there. It's not for everybody, right? You're taught safety, security, but I don't know that having a job is safe and secure. You could get let go, your job could merge, your company could fold, right? And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, even if you're very well paid, lots of people still live paycheck to paycheck or have golden handcuffs that they can't leave their jobs. And I just don't know that their position is safer than mine, right? So me, I have long-term debt on all of my properties. Even if the properties tanked in value, my debt is fixed, my rents are fixed, and I'll still cash flow, right? I don't care if we have a recession. If many people lose their jobs, it would hurt me, right? If my tenants can't pay rent, that would hurt me. But it's spread out over many tenants rather than concentrated in one person being able to work and one job employing me, right? So I find that diversification is actually more secure.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then all those degrees that you may have obtained in the past, would you say that that allowed you to become who you are, being so resourceful that way?
Yeah, and I think having a law degree, people naturally assume that you're smart and capable and somehow impressive, right? So it's great to have this badge of honor that I went through law school, I passed the bar exam, I practiced. People feel that's really amazing. I think it's more amazing that I'm running a rental property business, right? But they don't understand that aspect. So yeah, and my undergrad degree, I don't know that I used it, was Russian and sociology.
Oh, wow.
I cannot speak Russian anymore, but I do still like to people watch. So that's good. But I think all of these, they form you in ways that you just can't relate to. Law school, again, the issue spotting, the research, all of that was very helpful. But I think also just having the name recognition, the prestige of that helps me. Does it help me? If I had to quantify it, it probably wouldn't help me enough of the tuition that I paid, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay with that for all the other reasons.
Right. I'm curious, when I left my engineering job, and this was actually an actual thought that came through my mind was, oh, I'm going to lose that title. Because people do look up to those titles, like, oh, wow, you're an engineer. Oh, wow, you're a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Did any of that pop up in your head?
Definitely. There was a pride element that came into play, and I had this thought of the level. There's no barrier to entry academically to being a real estate investor. There's a very small academic barrier to entry to become an agent. There's a very large barrier to entry to become a lawyer. I basically chased the bottom, right? So I went from the highest barrier to entry to the industry that requires nothing to be an investor other than buying property, right? And I remember thinking, why am I doing that? What does it say about me? Do I feel proud of that decision, or I'm a little embarrassed? Is it because I couldn't cut it as an attorney? And I decided, no, that's not actually true. I was doing great. I just didn't like it. I was good at my job, didn't like it. I've had offers to go somewhere else, didn't want to because I'd have to work more. So I think I came to terms with it, but then I was really worried. I knew that other people would think like I did, and that didn't feel good. I think it probably didn't feel good for a while. And then once I was really able to build more of a portfolio and I was starting to get more recognition in this space of how amazing these accomplishments are, right? Their words, not mine, but that started to feel better. I started to feel more confident walking into a room. I've started to give presentations and get recognition on podcasts and conferences. And then I felt, I was getting more recognition than I did from the people that I wanted to be recognized by. And that was a big change for me, is I didn't need to be recognized by lawyers or as everybody else is a lawyer, because I felt really good about what I was doing. And the people that knew how hard it was, they also had that honor with me. So
how did you walk yourself to, despite what people thought of you, by ripping that title off and that pride, and to just still continue forward with that?
I think it was the pull, again, just following that I knew I couldn't stay in a space that made me unhappy. And it wasn't worth it for me. So one of the driving words of my life is freedom. And I didn't have freedom, and I felt very much a prisoner in the law firm, and I knew that I couldn't stay there. I was unhappy in my life, and the title wasn't worth that.
It was that contrasting, that comparison of the cost of keeping this title versus the cost of staying in this unhappy place, right? And that's how you make the decision. Well, this one's heavier, so let's just pursue this one.
Yeah, and I think it got to the point that the title was almost not important compared to how much fun I was having, and I just wanted to do all of that, right? And so the title was, I'm going to have to let that go. It became something that was just a consequence of the decision rather than being the big decision. At the beginning, it was one of the factors, but it got to the point that it just the joy in the real estate was so loud that the title was so soft, and it was imbalanced, and it was easy to just let it go. But I mean, maybe I haven't let it go completely, because I tell people I'm a recovering attorney, right? That gives context into who I am, and I think it also sets the stage. So if I'm really being honest, I probably haven't let it go completely, and I do like to throw that out there sometimes.
That's true. It's a very interesting perspective. I think I do that too sometimes. I'm like,
recovering engineer.
I was in the aerospace industry, right?
I'm basically a rocket scientist. Okay.
Maybe in my hallucinations, I use that to kind of separate myself from maybe other investors who didn't have the education. You talked about like the education, the barrier to entry to investing in real estate is not as high as the degrees that we had to get, right? So maybe that's true. Maybe that's still inside of me too.
But I think it can be a little bit about us and our pride, but it's also really helpful for context, right? So, when you meet somebody new, you don't know anything about them. And so I use recovering attorney kind of as like a soft introduction. It's funny. People are like, what are you talking about? It also gives you a sense of what is going on in my life, right? So I think I convey so much with those words that it is for me, but it's also for the new person I'm meeting.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And it sets almost the credibility of yourself as well.
Yeah.
And I think now that I think of it, it's helping in your investing business.
Oh, absolutely.
Set yourself
absolutely. Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be silly for me to not share that's part of that's part of my background. Yeah. Right. I've done that. I've gone through law school, and it's part of the picture I'd like for you to have of me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a benefit that you carry forward from that part of yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm still using the degree, I guess.
Yeah, you are. And oftentimes I think of degree as just a technical learning, but a lot of it was I learned all the soft skills of working within a team, or working on problem solving, or working on recognizing problems, right? That gave us a different perspective when we got out of the corporate world. It's like those soft skills just followed us and to solve the problems in the business. And businesses are roller coasters, basically. The problems are a must. And
and I remember, so in law school, you have classes that are on various subjects. I'm assuming it's the same for you. But one of our classes that we take is property. And so I actually found it very difficult. Ironically, it was one of the classes I was the least successful in because it was so complicated. And I will say that it's now certainly the class I used the most, but it gave me a foundation for understanding property rights and ownership structures and how much you can play, right? So you can own this, or you can own this, or you can own this. You can use the right, you can own the right to use it, but I'm going to take it back, right? All of those things were learned during property class. So it really changed my perspective on understanding how real estate works. So I had one semester, or actually 2 semesters of that, and that gave me a foundation for all the other information that I now take in. So I've been thrilled to have it.
Right. And the reason I really want to touch on that point is oftentimes when we're on the fence of should I leave or should I not, and I have wasted my time in studying this, right? But from your experience, it really sounds like even just that class from the semester really helped you to create the foundation of knowledge that you needed so that you can succeed in the real estate space, but also gave you the tools of problem solving as well. And so I believe nothing's ever wasted and everything just happens for you. So that you got to that place of pain that really allowed you to search for something new, and that gave you that contrast of what you really, really enjoyed. Because if not for that pain, you wouldn't have searched for something else, or even be open to listening to your mom's telling you, hey, what if a duplex, right?
Exactly. And I also think everybody has a competitive advantage, right? And it might be that your job gives you a lot of money and you have saved and you can put that into an investment or a business or start something. Or maybe it's that it's put you in front of a lot of high net worth individuals and you've got this very interesting network, or maybe it's taught you a soft skill, or maybe it's taught you performance, maybe who knows. So everyone has a competitive advantage that they can take from the field that they're in currently and use it forward. I don't think that there's very many things that anyone does that just exist in a silo and you just cut it out of your life and you don't use it going forward.
Yeah, that's so true. And so for anybody listening to this, and I always finish my podcast by asking the same question to all my guests, somebody listening to this and they really hear that nudge, I'm meant for something more. I'm not happy here right now. What's the one recommendation you would give them?
Follow the voice that is the loudest.
What does that mean?
It means if you know that, explore it, find where you vibe higher, and I guess work backwards. What are the obstacles that you're facing and how do you get around them? If you know that you're meant for something higher, what's in the way right now? What is your solution?
Thank you, Stephanie. And if anybody wanted to reach out to you or find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Stephanie Cabral. I have a course for teaching other landlords, the Lean Landlords. They can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and I think that's probably it. I always forget to prepare for that. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, I think is the way to go.
Yeah. If anything's missed, we'll just put everything in the show notes.
Thank you.
You guys can make sure you guys can get in touch with Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been so much fun. Yes, thank you for sharing your story and your experience. And I hope this really helped anybody listening to this and really just take a piece of her advice and her experience as well, because everybody's story is different. So thank you, Stephanie. And we'll see you guys at the next one.